I love coaching people, but I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to talk about tonight because I did that on purpose because I coach other people to tell their stories. So someone here tonight is going to be coached on telling their story. You see, it's so important. Let me tell you. I got a great storybook over here. Let me pull this out. I didn't do this before. That's how prepared I am. And there's last week's bulletin. Okay, so have you ever seen this book? This is a very, very cool storybook. Story openings are so important. And when you see a really, really good story opening, it's amazing what it does. Listen to how this one starts. Talking about attention grabber. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Wow. Has there ever been a better story opening than that? You know, this book is like full of some crazy, crazy stories. And one of my favorite verses in here, I believe, I can't find it right now. I believe it's God created man because he loves a good story. Well, that's actually not it, but it ought to be. Now, that was actually a Jewish philosopher that said that. But I believe it. I believe God created us because he loves a good story. Okay, what's the greatest story ever told? There's some wicked, wicked stories in there. God's a storyteller, and guess what? He created storytellers. Every one of us are storytellers. You know, I used to love outlines. I used to think that outlines were so cool. You know what I'm talking about? You got the, I just love to do it, even if the content was just nothing there. You know, Roman numeral 1, and what do we go to? We go to A, exactly, and then we go to what? Oh, I get so excited about that. And you just line them all up. You know, the problem is too many people teach and preach like that. That's awful. It really, really is. It doesn't convey anything. The most powerful weapon or the most powerful tool in the universe is the story. Think about it. The most atrocious acts in human history have been at the tail end of a story. What did Goebbels do in World War II? He was a minister of propaganda. What does that mean? He was chief propaganda storyteller. He weaved and created stories that caused an entire nation to just do horrific things. Okay? And there was another storyteller. One day he was in the Middle East. He was a Jewish guy, carpenter. He got up and he preached to a whole bunch of people. And he told stories. He told parables. Okay, we've got to cultivate that, and we've got to cultivate it in the right way. I get job offerings, proposals all the time from people, and here's what they want to know. They want to become better presenters. So they want to. This is what they write. I see it over and over. I think, oh my gosh, are they following a script? They want to know how to use their hands better. They want someone to coach them on hand movements. And they want someone to teach them about their posture so that they won't lean on the podium and they'll be able to use their hands better. And then they want to work on their facial expressions. They want someone to teach them to do better facial expressions. And to articulate their voices and to project. And they want people to actually pay them money to learn to do this exactly like everybody else. And these folks are going around there coaching. I'm sorry, was that too loud? They go around coaching off of yellowed notes. And they teach everyone the same thing. Well, you could go and there's lots of books that you could go and read that for yourself. Because let me tell you about the best possible control of voice, facial expression, and hand motions. Okay? I am a 5-year-old. Wait a minute, I can't. about what age do kids take their training wheels off? I mean, my daughter's 21, she still hasn't, so it's
6 or 7.
I am a 6-year-old boy who just took the training wheels off of my bike by myself and decided I'm going to go ride by myself, and I'm going to come into the house and I'm going to say, Mom, guess what? I just ran down the street and I took I took my training wheels off and I pedaled and I didn't fall down, and guess what? I turned around. I turned around the driveway down there like you told me to, and I pedaled back really, really fast. It started raining, so I started pedaling really, really fast, and I pedaled so fast that I didn't get wet. And I did it. I didn't fall down, Mom. I didn't fall down. Okay. Did somebody train a 6-year-old? And I pedaled down the street, Mom, and I didn't fall down. Okay. So I have a really low opinion of coaching like that. What's the difference between the person that's coached and the 6-year-old that's coming in and telling the story about taking the training wheels off?
He's telling it from his heart.
From his heart.
It's coming natural.
Natural. It's passionate. He can't help but do it. It's authentic, okay? So that's great if I'm going to coach 6-year-old boys. But, you know, what about the senior executive who has, 25 years experience, and she has yet one more quarterly review to deliver with all those spreadsheets on that PowerPoint? You know what? That's totally different, isn't it? That totally doesn't relate. There's no way there you can have any comparison to that. No. I'll get her in, and I'll sit her down, and I'll say, what's the most exciting thing that you did in the last 3 or 4 months? What's the most fun you had? I'll go through and I'll show some slides of some stuff. And this one recently was, we went to the lake, and we rode the ski-doos, and the water was choppy, and beat those waves so hard my earrings fell out. Okay? So guess what? She's going to do that quarterly presentation, but she's going to start telling the story about the ski-doo and beating the waves, and how the company is beating the waves, and how they're going through some hard times, and how they need to squeeze that, twist that throttle wide open and just do it, and just ride out the next quarter, just, selling like crazy and, doing everything they can to the point their earrings fall out. You think she could deliver that message a little more passionately than, and in the last part of the third quarter, we saw, whatever. Okay, so here's the thing. We're so used to telling the story by doing the outlines and doing it point by point, 3 points in a poem, and something about, kittens being thrown in a bag off a bridge. I don't know. So, and so we've got, but why don't we tell stories like they're supposed to be told? Okay? There are many different models of storytelling. There's kind of a triangle that you I'll just say you start here, and you have, you build, you have building, climax, I could talk about, starting my business, and I just wasn't really sure, and there were all these struggles, and I just didn't know what it was distinct about me that was different about other people. And then I thought about storytelling, and so that could be the climax of the story, and then the resolving, to resolve the story. And then so I founded Aria Executive Communications, and now I coach executives, and so I followed the kind of the triangle of the arch, okay? Or well, this is a triangle, not an arch. Okay, I never was good at geography. Anyway, so, but they can get a little more complex. And if I can possibly find this on here now, they can get a little more complex, and typically they are. We'll talk about, there's 3 and 5 act scripts and all this kind of stuff, and I won't get too technical because it's not really that difficult. But like I said, I'm not going to tell my story tonight. We're going to tell somebody else's story, and then you can hook onto that, and you can think about how your story applies. Okay, because tonight we have a very reluctant person here tonight whose name is Karen, who said she didn't want to do anything. And actually, she's not. She's not going to do anything besides we're going to talk about how to plug her story in. And see, what happens is, first time here. We're going to, the story's actually going to follow a circle, okay? We're going to start here at the beginning, and the story's going to go around, okay? And down here we're going to have a midpoint, and that's the same as the climax of the triangle, except it's kind of upside down. And then we're going to have it come up here. Because the Bible says we should always be willing to give an account. I'm going to add in there, we should always be willing to give an account of our story with the story arc. Okay? Because here's why. What you do at the first part is you describe a problem. Okay? You describe if you're trying to sell something, you talk about pain points. You're an executive and you've got a big conference coming up and you're all scared about it. So I'll develop that tension. I'll build that tension up, So over here we talk about doubt. We talk about obstacles that you've faced. And this is what movie scripts follow. They follow this the mission. Remember Mission Impossible. They're given the problem, and they have all these obstacles to overcome, and then they go through and they figure out how to do it, and then they don't necessarily have the resolving, but what they have to do is figure out how to apply the knowledge and things that they have. It applies to so many stories. Why did I draw this arrow here and this arrow here? Well, sometimes it's called the hero's journey. This is the going away from home, and this is the coming back home. What story fits into that? Perfect. The prodigal son. Prodigal son thought he was in pain at home. Oh, he's just so miserable hanging out in dad's house and everything. And so he wanted to go and get this resolution, and then he figured out what it was all about. It never provided what he thought it was going to get. So how does he make the journey back home? All the doubts, all the obstacles, all the self-talk, all the enemy telling, oh, don't go back, dad's not going to take you back in, blah, 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 and all this. So it follows that circle. Then as there's sometimes experimenting as you try to solve your problem. The midpoint is the breakthrough. So we follow this. I believe that the entire worship service on Sunday should follow this. And I spent time in liturgical churches, and I realized it's following a circle. Every Sunday's following a circle. We come in and we have this feeling of going into someplace other, that it's different from where we've been all week. We don't necessarily belong because we haven't done such a great job of following God this week, so we go in and we're humble and we genuflect before we sit down, and we sit there, and then the scriptures are read, and then the New Testament is read where? It's brought out into the middle of the sanctuary, God coming to us, the New Testament, the good news, is read to us, and then we all confess our faith, and then we confess our sins, and hey, guess what? God comes to us, midpoint, breakthrough, and then we receive communion, and it follows a story. Every week follows a story. I coached a pastor this week on kind of that, because he did this great thing at the beginning of service, had great praise and worship. Really, he gave the invitation first. It was actually kind of cool. The music was so pointed about describing the human condition and the human need for God and to be reconciled to God and come here and get clean, and God's ready, come return to God, recommit and everything. And then he preached a sermon on something else. completely. He preached a sermon on, being the body of Christ. It was completely disjointed. Why? Because we follow the bulletin method of worship planning. We follow the outline. Point 1, praise and worship. Point 2, sermon. Doesn't have to be related. No. Humans are story related. We have to follow the cycle to really, really have that impact. Okay. You say, well, what about the Holy Spirit? Well, the Holy Spirit inspired this book, right? And there's a whole lot of story arc in here. So somewhere along the way, the preaching classes in seminary kind of missed it. So anyway, looks like I am presenting rather than telling someone else's story. So I'll get right to it. Back to it. Then on the other side, you kind of experiment again with something, and this could be anything. You could talk about, hey, who had a prayer answered this week, right? And who had a prayer answered, and then something resolved itself, and then a relationship was. You can follow the arc. It doesn't have to be a major motion picture production. It doesn't have to be a worship service. It could be something as simple as just this, or your testimony. Your testimony. Wow, if it doesn't follow this and draw people in and relate to people here, talk about what the solution is, and then you followed Jesus and bam, everything was perfect, right? Resolve, denouement, no. It's the journey. You're still on a journey. You're still trying to figure out how to integrate him into your life, how to do that surrender, how to grow in knowledge and wisdom. It's the going home. Going home where? See, that's pretty cool. Okay, so then over here you have doubt too, but it's a different kind of doubt. You know the answer, but you doubt your ability to stay with it, and then you work all the way up here to the idea of mastery, and then you're back home. So what happened is, let's go somewhere in our minds, okay? Name a church around here big enough to do a conference. Crossroads, okay? So Tammy has organized this conference at Crossroads on what? What's the conference on? Marriage conference. And it's also, marriage and prayer. Let's make it a marriage and prayer conference, okay? And so guess what? Tammy comes in and says, guess what? My transition speaker between the two keynotes, I have an 8-minute testimony in there, and they got sick. They canceled. So I need you to help me with it, okay? And you say, I don't want to. I'm not prepared. Anybody in the room would say that, right? And so don't worry. We have, in the absence of a presentation coach, we have Michael Cooley, who will help you for a few moments. And you can tell the story about what God is, what's the greatest thing that God has shown you in your life in the last week, a prayer answered, about your journey to the challenges of going to school in the evening and that type of thing. And then you follow it, or anybody who, anybody want to be the presenter for that? Just, I'll sketch it out. You don't have to actually do it. We're just going to map it on the chart so you know how to do yours. Who wants to get mapped on the chart? It's really not like palm reading or anything. Okay, so what's the greatest thing God is doing with you?
He is simplifying my life.
Okay, what was it like when it was complicated?
Oh, Lord.
You only have 8 minutes. Okay, so what was it like that people can relate to? You know, that other people will say, oh yeah, I know what that's like. Okay, so what was it like?
Very overwhelming.
Overwhelming. Okay, we need you gain or lose your audience in 3 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, if I walk up here and say, hi, my name's Tammy, and I'm glad that you're here this week. They're gone. Okay, see? So So you got 3 seconds.
Okay.
So you were overwhelmed. What's the biggest example that you can think of on one day we thought, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't stand it?
Okay, I went down to my full basement downstairs, and there is like 1,000 items down there everywhere, and it's like so overwhelming that
It's clutter?
clutter.
Clutter.
that-
It wasn't like a tornado. You weren't broken into.
No.
This was self-induced clutter.
Self-induced
Okay.
clutter. I
All right.
don't know how in the world it happened.
Did you step on a Lego and say a wordy dirt or anything like that happen? I mean, did something happen? I mean, did you trip on something or you what happened that day when you saw that clutter? Did you take your breath away? Did you pass out? Did you get dizzy? Give me an emotion.
Yes, like, I mean, just like so daunting. I mean, it's like, yes, it takes your breath away. Like, oh my goodness.
Okay. So you would not say, hi, I'm Amy, and one day I walked down to the basement and there was a lot of clutter. I'm like,
No.
woo. I'm like, gotta go. Okay, no. You're going to say, I walked down to the basement and I couldn't believe what I saw. And they're like, what did she see? I can't believe that, who made the clutter?
I did.
You made the clutter, okay. So it probably was Legos, right? Is what you're saying? You left your Legos down there?
Lots of Legos. Yeah,
Okay.
Sure.
I couldn't believe how, what couldn't you believe?
My whole life was summed up in a lot of clutter and junk and, well, a lot of it's good stuff. But, I mean, it was just a
But when
lot
it gets
of
that
it.
much, it comes out that way, that's all it is.
Legos can be symbolic.
Okay. I walked down to the basement. What day?
What day?
Make up a date.
Okay, Saturday.
Some of the truth that you tell will be truer than others, okay? 6 months ago, it was a Saturday morning. It was raining outside. Paint a picture.
Yes.
I walked down to the basement, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I'm thinking, what in the world did you see? Was it Spider-Man? I mean, what's down there? There was so much clutter, okay? Have you all ever just seen so much clutter and stuff that you just couldn't make sense of it, relate to them? Mm-hmm. See? Okay, relate. So I'm just going to draw arrows through it. I couldn't believe I let this happen to myself, to my home, to my family. What couldn't you believe you let happen? That you had what?
That I allowed clutter to suffocate our lives.
Okay? That you had allowed this to happen.
Right.
Now you got to relate. Okay? So you got to throw it back to the audience. There are some neat freaks and perfectionists in the world that would never have this happen unless a tornado actually did affect their home. So they will not relate to that. But there is a chance that, voicemails, emails, something that doesn't actually get on the floor and that you step on, would catch up to them, or friends that they haven't contacted, or something that they had that the stress of life had gotten so, because people can relate to that. So you set up that tension, you make them hurt. You want them to hurt. You want them to feel your pain. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't believe that I allowed this to happen. And we all do this, don't we, in some area of our life. We let something slip until it gets to the point that it's overwhelming and we can't deal with it anymore. And we see it and we just don't know where it came from. Are y'all hurting? Do you feel the tension? Okay. And so what was the answer? What was the solution? What was the elixir that you found? What was the quest? What did you discover that solves the problem?
Okay, so I finally surrendered
Okay.
and let go
Of?
of all of the things that I allowed to suffocate.
Okay.
And the answer was to hire this wonderful estate sale people called, of all things, Slob Sisters, which I hate that word slob. But But I finally said, okay, I'm letting go
Right.
of control and handing over to people that were professionals and coming in and handling it.
Right. So that was your breakthrough.
And that was my
And so everything was solved at that moment, right? And the clutter disappeared and everything was perfect. And you no. Okay, so they came and they priced it out, right? Okay, and then what happened on your journey home? You saw a lot of things you didn't want to let go, didn't you?
Yes.
It's true. It's so true.
Oh my God.
No! I'm not giving up my Legos, right? Okay, so see, we typically think of building the tension in the story all on the first end. It's not.
No.
It's not. Neither is your journey. Neither is your testimony. It's not. There's some points that, no, God, I'm not giving up that friendship. Yeah. No, I'm not giving up cigars. I mean, it's whatever. It's you know. Well, anyway, I won't draw a cigar. So okay. So you went through this, and so what were some of the specific
going through
examples?
We're going through
As
it.
we speak.
You're going through it.
Yes,
Okay.
like my house is full of, in fact, they took all of my stuff and has made it into this beautiful, organized
Okay.
place.
So you had doubt. You had
Yes.
doubt.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Even though it's
fear.
beautiful. Yeah. A little bit.
Fear of what it's going to be like when you
Yes.
don't have those Legos.
Yeah, because on
Okay.
Friday, a bunch of strangers are gonna walk into that house and,
Ooh.
yeah, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
You can color coordinate those Legos.
Okay. So, all right. So then that's going to be where you're going to have a lot of doubt. And so if you have those moments, we'll just start from the beginning. Now think how any story, your testimony, talk about how your life was before, the pain you were in, the separation from God, the not having purpose, the not having meaning. Describe it all, and then what happened, and then what happened on the other side. There was still doubt. Is this real? Okay. I mean, all kinds of things can cause you doubt. You know, it feels like God's not listening. Yes.
When you were talking about doubt after the breakthrough, the one thing that keeps coming to my mind is John the Baptist himself.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Are
he
you the
was
one?
told, spread the gospel before Jesus. Jesus came. He baptized Jesus, and
Mm-hmm.
all these things happened. And next thing you know, time later, he's in prison saying, "Is he the one, or we're waiting for someone else?"
Because he,
Yeah.
There's the doubt.
Yeah. That's some serious doubt.
Yeah.
But ultimately, do you believe at the core of his being
Yeah.
he had that doubt? You know? Or, and that's the struggle. We before he understood his mission in life, he had doubt about God. Then, I guess, midpoint in his life would be baptism of Jesus, and it still remained. Okay, it's a struggle on both sides. Okay, so, but the more important story here is the estate sale. So we're gonna follow this around, okay? And I'm gonna stop and look and all this kind of stuff. What's something you didn't want to give up that everyone really wanted you to give up that you're going to?
Well, something I have to give up that's really difficult is my grandparents' organ.
That's not a very small thing. That's a pretty large thing. Yeah. Okay, so if the organ is gone, that's going to make space for what?
Well, we moved to a one-bedroom apartment already.
Okay, that'll mean you can get in your door.
So I can't get it.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, that's good. Now, ultimately, the end of the arc is mastery. And I X that out. I don't know if you noticed because you haven't yet mastered this. But that's a good analogy because we haven't yet mastered the life of faith yet, have we? Okay. So,
Can I say happily ever after? We lived happily ever after.
but it hasn't happened yet. So
No.
after the estate sale, you can come and do this. And you'll have the outline so that you'll be able to do your 10-minute speech and everyone will be able to critique you. And so I woke up one morning and I was overwhelmed. I couldn't believe the clutter. I went down to my basement and I could not believe the clutter, the mess. How did this happen? How did I let this happen to me? How did I let this happen to my home? How did it get this way? I allowed it. It was my poor choices that allowed it. But don't we all make poor choices? Don't we all have clutter in our lives? Don't we all step on Legos? Don't you know that we just can't stay on top of it all. And so we hoard things that we think are important to us, but they're really not. We could really live without them. And so I discovered the idea of an estate sale. And the folks came out and they talked to me and they told me, so I surrendered to the idea that, I could get this stuff cleaned up and I could actually make a little money so that I could make a donation to the Legacy Center. And so 15%. And so it hit me that I really could, because they blessed my life so much, that I really could, I could do it. And so they told me what it would be like, and we set the date. But then I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about the organ that meant so much to us. We just can't take it with us into the new apartment. And so I know it's the right thing to do, but I have fear about that. And then there's some other things as they start going through stuff, and they don't take up much space. And I thought, no, I can't give that up. But I agreed to do the estate sale, and I'm going to stick to it because I know it's the answer to this pain. And if you have clutter in your basement, let me highly recommend the Slob Sisters because they were just great. Okay, you described your journey away. You described your journey away, how you journeyed away from having a neat home to a cluttered home, and then you return home. And then is the call to action. Of course, in church we call that the invitation. The call to action where we say, maybe you felt the same way I felt. Maybe you have the same situation that I have. But you don't have to live like that. You don't have to continue to exist. You can get control of your life. You can get control of your clutter. You can pick up the phone and call the Slob Sisters. Right? Okay.
But I would so relate that to a spiritual condition.
Excellent.
In fact, I'm keeping professional photographs of my basement for future years.
So you've got a presentation there, and now you followed the art. Now, is that all that difficult?
No.
And see, you can plug into that. You can plug in any story. The catch is, for really, really big presentations, is that people get so caught up in their content they fall back into the outline mode, and they don't have a story. They don't know what story to put to it, and so I get to poke around in their head with chopsticks and pull out the stories, the stories that You know, we have so many experiences in life. No matter how old you are, you have so many experiences in life. Pastor, I was talking with, last week, told the story about, I'm his age, so I knew exactly what he's talking about the story about Charles Atlas and the ads in the back of the magazine, and the, Boys Life magazine, Cub Scout magazine, there's I guess that's where it was, I can't remember. But, it was this story, and it was actually well over 100 years old, but you're 8 years old or 7 years old, and you've just ridden your bicycle without the training wheels, and you're all hyped up on catnip, and you're looking at the Boys Life magazine, and you see this, I was on the beach, and this bully kicked sand in my face, and I decided that I was going to bulk up and become a muscle man, and so I developed this program, and my name is Charles Atlas. He was actually a real person, and it was like in the 18-somethings, and so, hundreds and millions of boys, mailed off for his program, and he was able to tell that story about how, it really didn't solve his issue, but we get sucked into things, and I mean that's just a tiny little thing, but it's a story, and we're all storytellers, and sometimes we're reluctant to tell our story because we think it's narcissistic. We think it's, I'm talking about me. I'm not supposed to talk about me. I'm supposed to serve others, and I'm supposed to talk about others and talk about Jesus. And if you talk about Jesus, what's Jesus done to you? Because guess what? It's not your story. It's his story. And it's not you that's amazing. It's grace that's amazing. So tell your story and plug it into the circle. Plug it in the circle. Follow along, draw people in, make it interesting. And because the day of someone coming into a room and sitting before people seated in chairs in rows with a podium and lecturing to them is dead. It's gone. Gone. See? So that's my story. That's what I learned. That's my calling, and that's how I pull these things out of people, and sometimes they don't want to talk about it for a while, so we go and we do a presentation that's half as good for a while until I get them to come around and tell their real story, because like I said, it's not our story, it's God's story, and we have a responsibility to share any opportunity we have with quarterly report. Walking to the grocery store, walking out of the grocery store with the bagger, spend some time with them. It doesn't matter where we're at, and so that's what's important. So she's going to share that in a couple of weeks when she comes back for her 10 minutes with pictures. So thank you so much.